3 women in Ohio that have been rescued. The 3 women are Michelle Knight, who vanished at the age of 20 in 2002, Amanda Berry, who disappeared at the age of 16 in 2003, and Gina DeJesus, who vanished when she was 14. She was on her way home from school. Now, these 3 women have been missing for nearly a decade, and they were discovered by a neighbor who heard one of the women, Amanda Berry, basically screaming for help. She had, she was knocking on the door, and a man by the name of Charles Ramsey heard, and he helped to rescue her. He took her to his home, where she proceeded to call 911 and ask for help, and she was rescued. Now, this is a crazy story because they've been in captivity for nearly a decade. How does that happen? How do people not know? People in Ohio right now are really criticizing the police department because apparently there were 2 instances where police were called to the scene. In one instance, a neighbor had heard a woman crying for help in the backyard. She was allegedly naked and crawling in the backyard. Police were called, but apparently they didn't go inside the house to check what was happening. And there were other instances where neighbors were saying that they heard screaming inside the house, and that was also not investigated.
Yeah, so to be fair to the cops, it's not like the girl disappeared, there was screaming in the backyard the very next day, and the cops are like, don't worry about it, right?
Yeah.
Now, on the other hand, it drives me crazy how lazy people are sometimes. And again, we've had this discussion when it's cops, you can't do it. You don't have an ordinary job. It's not like if you're a plumber and you screw it up a little bit, oh my God, the pipe's leaking, and then you got to go back the next day. Like, if you got a report of a screaming naked woman in the yard, go do paperwork, get a warrant, go inside the house, do whatever you got to do, find out, investigate, right? And so it's really discouraging that we didn't find these guys. And, these guys are so sick. And I have the visceral reaction instantly of like, oh my God, I want to rip these guys to shreds. So
the story has many twists and turns. First, let me tell you who got arrested. 3 brothers got arrested in connection to this case. They included 50-year-old Ariel Castro, 52-year-old Ariel Castro, and 54-year-old Pedro Castro. And those are the guys pictured right there.
Ariel apparently is the primary suspect. He's the owner of the house, and they're the one. He's the one that they're looking into as the person that might have led this. Now, what role the brothers had is not clear yet. What role the kids might have had, and he's got kids, Ariel does, is even scarier.
It is even scarier. Now, I should also note that Amanda Berry has a 6-year-old child, and no reports confirm anything right now, but there is speculation that the child is Ariel Castro's.
Yeah, and
which I don't even understand how that happens. How does someone give birth without getting discovered?
Well, there's now some sources that are saying that there were multiple pregnancies throughout those 10 years. So how did they have the babies? How did they not have the babies? How did all of that happen within the house? And if it didn't happen within the house, how do you explain that? And look, sometimes what happens, and this is now totally speculation, is Stockholm Syndrome, where the person who's been kidnapped starts to feel some connection to the kidnapper. And that's a very well-known psychological phenomenon. It doesn't say anything about the victim. It's just what happens to our minds to be able to cope with the situation.
Yes.
That's a possibility. The other possibility is there could have been terrible threats. So, for example, if they went to the hospital to deliver, it could be like, all right, if you say anything, I got the other 2 girls in the house and I'll kill them, right? And I got my 2 brothers, they'll kill them. So all of that is possible. We don't know how they kept the women in the house for 10 years, but we do know that they were not there of their own volition, because in this case, Amanda was trying to bust out of the house, screaming, etc. The minute she had an opportunity, thank God Charles Ramsey was there, and he broke down the door, and that's how we discovered this. And then the cops came in and found the other 2 women.
Yes. Now, in terms of the Castro family being involved in this, there was a very, very good friend of Gina DeJesus, a woman by the name of, or girl at the time, Ariel Castro, who was very good friends with her. Apparently, they were hanging out one day, and she ended up on America's Most Wanted in 2005 to talk about the disappearance of DeJesus, and here's what she had to say.
I talked to the last person who did see Gina that day, her best friend and classmate, Ariel Castro. The 2 girls were walking home together hoping to spend the rest of the afternoon at Gina's house.
I decided to call my mom and ask her, and so she gave me 50 cents to call my mom, and so my mom said no, that I can't go over her house. And so I told her I couldn't, and she said, well, okay, I'll talk to you later, and she just walked.
So now it gets even worse in that the 50 cents she was going to use to get on the bus. She didn't have the 50 cents, she walked, and that's when she got picked up by Ariel Castro, who's the father of the girl you just saw.
Yeah.
And man, that's another gut punch. And I'll tell you what, man, in these situations, you got to look close. They were within a couple of miles of where they got taken from. You know, that's where the Castro house was. And it turns out one of their best friends' dad is the one that took him. Usually it's not some random guy who's 17 states away. Usually they're within a couple of miles of you and they have some sort of connection to you. So, you know, it's terrible because then you immediately, if that ever, God forbid, ever happens to anybody, right? You're going to get paranoid about the people you know. But to some degree you should be, because that's a situation where you got to find out what happened and you got to do it quickly, and you got to go through all these people and think it might be improbable, but I got to look into it.
A few other incredible parts of this story. Tito DeJesus, the uncle of Gina DeJesus, was good friends with Ariel Castro. In fact, they would play in like a salsa band together. And apparently they were playing in a band for the past 20 years. He recalled visiting Castro's house but never noticed anything out of the ordinary, saying that there was very little furniture and that it was filled with instruments. So that's just a crazy part of the story because, you know, they're good family friends, and it turns out that this guy is doing something hideous behind the scenes. And
did that daughter that we just showed you, did she have any idea? I mean, how is she in the house if she doesn't know? Maybe there is a way. I mean, obviously, a lot of people entered the house and a lot of people had no idea, right? And then the son of Ariel Castro apparently wrote an article about one of the missing girls. Did he know? We don't know. Obviously, they'll investigate. And there's some chance they don't know. And don't rush to judgment. My visceral reaction is, I want to, you know, tear him limb to limb. But don't go with your initial reaction. That's why we have a court system. That's why we got to make sure that we've got the right guys and go through the procedure and then bring them to justice. And by the way, one more note on that. So these guys bother me just as much, if not more, than any bomber. Look, that bombers killed that 8-year-old kid in Boston and 3 other people, and that disturbs me to my core. What these guys did also disturbed me to my core. But nobody's talking about not reading them their Miranda rights. So if you got a crime, whether it's a murder, it's a kidnapping, it's a rape, etc., you read them their rights, you treat them as American citizens, and then you bring their ass to significant justice.
I mean, these guys destroyed these women's lives. I mean, Amanda Berry, of course, hasn't seen her mother ever since she was abducted, and her mother died in 2006. Okay, 3 years after she was abducted, and she never got to say bye to her mom. I mean, that part of the story brought me to tears because I just can't imagine if I was in that situation.
There was a reporter who covered it very thoroughly, and the mom's dying wish was, if you ever find her, wear this T-shirt, which had some emotional resonance with her and her daughter when you find her. And that reporter today wore the T-shirt when she came home.